Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. We're going all the way out to Montana. Jeremy Shields is the head wrestling coach at a brand new program in East Helena. We'll talk about that, but he's also the executive director of USA Wrestling Montana, also on the board for AAU and USA Wrestling, and club coach for East Helena. But great to have you on, Jeremy.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.
You have a unique story. You didn't get all the way through high school, but you feel like this is why you're back in wrestling. Explain why you dropped out of wrestling in high school and why you're back in it now.
You know, my parents started me wrestling when I was 4. I come from a wrestling family. I wrestled till I was 16, 17 years old. Got injured. Didn't have the best of experiences with it when I was in high school, and it really I left with kind of a sour taste in my mouth, and went off and played football at college. And when I came back, my buddy said, he was pushing me. He goes, "Hey, you need to be involved in this." And I was like, I have no interest in being involved in wrestling. And honestly, I got on the phone. I talked to my mom a little bit, and she goes, "You owe." And I said, I don't understand what that means. And she goes, "You owe. You have to give back to children. You have to give back to a sport that was instrumental in you growing up. Whether you remember it or not, you started when you were 4. You wrestled for 12 years before you decided you weren't going to do it anymore." And you know, the next day I was at practice, and I haven't hardly missed a practice since. Unfortunately, wrestling is one of those sports. If you're not loving it, it's a lot of work because it doesn't love you back. And the problem with that is once you lose a kid to the sport, it's very rare that they ever come back. And the life lessons that come from this sport are something that you can't really replicate anywhere else.
What's that like, building a brand new program at East Helena? That's unique in that you have a new high school and you're bringing wrestling into that high school. How's that been?
Well, you know, it's been interesting. We started off, we only had freshmen this first year. We didn't even have a high school. They had to start the year at the middle school. They built a wing on the middle school while the high school was being built. So no wrestling room. Practicing at one of the elementary schools, rolling up mats every day. It's been interesting. It's been fun. You know, we started off, we had 18 kids out. 18 freshmen that had never wrestled before. And we finished with 16 of those kids. Had a kid make it to state. When we get done with the interview, I'm off to practice because I still have 10 or 12 kids that are showing up twice a week to get on the mat. So it's been exciting. Can't say it, sometimes a little frustrating. But you know, the kids work hard. They put in the time, you know, so obviously then we go put in our time. And so it's been a lot of fun. And the fortunate thing about with East Helena, they haven't had a high school there, but a good share of the state champions that have wrestled out of the Helena High program came from East Helena. Guys like Toby Erickson, who wrestles who wrestles Greco for the states, wrestles for the CAP program. So there's a tradition there. Unfortunately, as we get going, we haven't seen very many kids come through the program yet, but we'll get there. You know, I'm excited about the willingness the kids are to put in the time.
Lay out the landscape of Montana, a massive state from a land perspective, but not very much from the population perspective. How do you get competition? How far do you have to travel?
You know, it's always funny, like when we're in Fargo and the people talk about, and they go, "Hey, we drove 3 hours on a bus." And I was like, wow, we drove 6 hours to get 2 matches. So Montana, if you go from Kalispell, which is in the northwest corner, and you head over to Sydney, you're looking at about 750 miles across the state. And you know, every weekend you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, crawl in a vehicle, and you drive for 6 or 7 hours so you can go in and get on, and you hope when you get there that there's going to be a match whenever it's time to step on the mat. I mean, it's I will say that one thing that track wrestling has done for the state of Montana is that people know where they need to go to get competition, because you can take a look and see if people are showing up. And so that's one of the huge things of having wrestling kind of go digital, is it makes it so if I look over and see that there's 3 kids here already, it makes sense that we call 2 or 3 other people, and people are real good about getting on the phone and going, hey, are you going over to Kalispell this weekend? Yeah. Well, now we have a 5 or 6 man bracket. And that's one of the things that the digital age has brought to this state, because there was a lot of times where you go crawl in the vehicle, drive across the state, get there, and not even have a match. So it's pretty fantastic. And like I said, and people here don't think anything about driving to Denver or driving to Salt Lake or driving across the state just to get a match, because we love it here, you know, and we don't have the numbers. Like you said, there's 1 million people in the whole state. But what we do have is we have a passion for the sport. And, you know, we've had some pretty good success on the national level over the years, with our athletes doing well. And so the fact that we know the kids know that, they know who those people are, those guys come back into the state and get back. You know, you talk about, you know, the Zadeks, you talk about them coming in and running their camps, being part of the national team staff, getting Barrett Stanghill, who is still wrestling, who's over at Northern Michigan, who was with the Storm, coming back in and doing camps. That those people that have been out in the world that are still going, Toby Erickson coming back in, spending time at Christmas. We have a real strong tradition, and people give back, so the kids know who those people are, and they want to emulate them. And so that's one of the things we have, even though huge state, small population, but we love the sport. And so, and like I said, people come home and they give back.
Do these kids know that there's some good guys that have come through, whether it's Brandon Eggum, head coach at Minnesota, was there, Bill Zadek's the head of USA Wrestling Freestyle, he's from Montana, Gene Davis is from Montana, Mike Zadek, and Kendall Cross was born in Montana, so there's a pretty good tradition. Do they know that?
They do know that, and we push it real hard. You know, it was about 5 years ago, as a matter of fact, we, on our Fargo singlets, we actually put those guys' face on the back of the singlets, just so that the kids could see and go, hey, look, this can be you. They know who those people are. And like I said, and those people come back and give back to the state. You know, Gene comes back every few years and does some camps and stuff through here. Like I said, Bill and Mike do stuff every year. Brandon runs a clinic every year over in Sydney. So yeah, the kids, they know who they are, and the coaches push to for them, you know, say, hey, this is a possibility. Look, these people are from where you're from. You know, Jarrett Deegan is over at Iowa State right now. Been All-American over there. He comes and does camps, 2 or 3 camps every single year. So not only does the state really push to keep those people in the forefront of kids' minds, those people come home and give back. So they know who they are simply because they've been to their camps. They're still a part of Montana wrestling, even though they're out in the world.
How about Emmett Wilson, a guy from Montana State Northern? Where is he? Do you get connected with him at all?
He's over in Miles City, and he is involved. He's involved with club coaching over there. You see him out and about, and it's one of those things where, you know, he still has ties to that Montana State Northern room, but we don't see as much of him as we do some of the other guys. You know, the one thing that really in the state that those group of people are really tied to is the freestyle and Greco piece. Most of those guys you were talking about, and Emmett didn't do as much of that. And not that he hasn't said that he's not willing to jump back in and get involved. And so it's just kind of one of those things that just simply getting him rolling. I mean, obviously as a Hodge Trophy winner, you know, some of the kids know who they are, but that's starting to get far enough out where the kids don't know who he is like they do those other guys, because he's just not as involved at the state level. I think he's really involved over there with the Miles City clubs.
Because it's such a big state, are there factions within the state where you're split up and there's different people that run different parts of the state?
You know, it was really there was an issue. Really an issue years ago with the AAU USAW thing, because AAU wrestling nationally actually started in Montana. And people aren't necessarily aware of that. Well, Eastern Montana is still very much AAU. But in all honesty, there are very few clubs that aren't dual sanctioned anymore. So, we run our state as our Triple Crown as the AAU folk style as the state championships for folk style, freestyle and Greco or the USA. You want to win a Triple Crown, you got to go through both sides to get it done. And so I think there was a time when it was tough. There was some strife and some struggle, but for the most part, I think we're at a spot where both sides of the state know we just want to do what's best for kids. And so there isn't so much of that. There's not so much of that infighting as there used to be. Not that there's not still some of that, a little bit of that faction stuff, but in general, like I said, there's very few clubs that aren't carrying both sanctions. So really, that for the most part has gone away. The one piece that we probably struggle with more than anything is the folk style freestyle situation, and partly because we run that freestyle season later in the year. It comes to a certain time of the year when you can go outside in Montana. It's kind of tough to talk people to go back into the gym, and so that's probably more of our fight is between the folk style freestyle, which is a national. I mean, that's going on everywhere else. That's not just in Montana, obviously, but that's probably more of our thing, more than factions being between organizations. It's really between just the styles and fighting the weather.
Speak to that. With Montana being an outdoor haven, is that hard to get people to go inside to wrestle?
In the beginning of the year, you struggle a little bit with those dads and those coaches that want to be out hunting. And then it comes time to wrestle and everybody's ready to roll, and we go real hard. Starting usually, you start hitting those tournaments. Like I said, the Montanans don't think anything about running down to Denver and doing those RMN series or doing the Tour of America series with USA Wrestling. So they get pretty excited. But once we start hitting there, that first week of April, second week of April, it gets really hard to keep the kids in the gym. Because like I said, once it gets nice outside, they want to get on the motorbikes, they want to get on the rivers, they want to get on the lakes. Like I said, we struggle a little bit maybe in the first part of the season, and that's more around the hunting thing. And then, but once it starts getting nice, people have had enough of being inside, and it becomes a little tougher sell for sure.
Tell me about the state tournament, what the energy is like at the Montana High School State Wrestling Championships.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a pretty special thing, considering that by the time you get to the finals, I mean, they figure that they run 10,000 people are there to watch the tournament. And what's really neat about that is the only sporting events in Montana that garner bigger crowds are the Cats and the Grizzlies football games. So it's pretty electric. It's pretty cool. They bring it all in. It's not they call it an all-class tournament. They still break it into classifications. You have AA, which is your large schools, A, your middle, and then BC on the smaller end. But we all congregate in Billings at the Metra, and it's truly special. You'll get people that aren't wrestling people that'll show up to that state tournament and go, "Oh my God, I had no idea this is what this was like." And like I said, there's no other high school event in Montana that can put 10,000 people in the stands, and they break records every year at that tournament down at the Metro in Billings. It is fantastic. And
with this, speak to Helena. Is there a good wrestling culture there?
It's okay. It's something that's being built. They're doing a really nice job over at Capitol High. They're doing a good job at Helena High, and then with the new high school in East Helena, one of the pieces of that does is it waters down Helena High a little bit, because we actually have pulled part of their group out of their school to come to the new high school in East Helena. But there's a pretty good tradition there in terms of winning state championships. No, but some fantastic individuals have rolled through, and a lot of people that are familiar with Montana wrestling or even on the national scene know a little bit about that Montana Cobra team that was out of Townsend, which is just down the road. And a lot of those kids that wrestled for that Townsend program with the Rousers, with that group of kids, were Helena kids. So they would drive down to Townsend because they were really looking just for competition, looking for a great place to practice. So, you know, you have the Shreks that wrestled here, that that have made age group world teams. So yeah, pretty good. But like I said, as far as a tradition of being strong in terms of state placing as teams, not so much fantastic individuals.